St. Kitts and Nevis, and welcome to another edition of Inside the News. I am your host, German Abel, joining you today. As usual, I'm in the hot seat today. It has been a very busy news week for us in St. Kitts and Nevis, media personnel, that is, bringing you all the latest in terms of what has been happening. We do know the biggest story over the week has been the continued escalation in the Middle East, which has been having serious repercussions for us. And yes, serious repercussions for us in St. Kitts and Nevis and the broader Caribbean region. But before we do any of that, we want to acknowledge our partners, and then we'll come right back and jump into the discussions here on Inside the News.
To the hands that plant, the families that harvest, and the farmers who feed St. Kitts and Nevis, we thank you. This March, TDC Home and Building Depot celebrates you with 20% off lawn and garden essentials. Everything you need to grow stronger, greener, and better than ever. Visit TDC Home and Building Depot today, and let's keep growing together. TDC, proudly supporting the farmers of St. Kitts and Nevis. Together we succeed.
Build with us at Hostels Building and Nevis Centers. We don't just sell materials, we help you build your dreams. Whether it's a new home, a renovation, or DIY project, we're here to make it happen. That's why we say, build with us. From foundation to finish, come to our stores where we have the best in building materials, hardware, tools, paints, expert advice, and more. Whatever you need, you can count on us. So if you're ready to get started, build with us. With Hostels Building and Nevis Centers, you're not just building a structure, you're building a future. Let us help you create something amazing. Dream with us, plan with us, grow with us, build with us. Come build with us at Hostels Building and Nevis Centers today. Build with us at Hostels.
Inside the News, I am German Abel sitting in again. And this morning, we're going to take a look at what's happening in the Middle East and its implication for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and to an extent, and by large, the wider Caribbean region. This morning, I am joined by Mr. Schneidman Warner, certified accountant, and I also have with me Andre Huey, journalist and entrepreneur in his own right. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for taking your Saturday morning to join us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Good morning.
So, we have seen what has been transpiring since last year in terms of, but sorry, let me correct myself. From last month surrounding this entire war between Israel, the United States, and Iran. I want to start with you first, Mr. Warner, to get your take right there before we hear a little bit from the IMF in terms of the global implication and to an extent regional implications. What would you say to the general public out there about this war and the potential implications for this entire the geopolitical fallout from this?
The nature of a war is the inherent nature of war is its unpredictability. You go way back hundreds of years when we were using cannon. and we were using flints. And you never knew when you fired a cannonball whether or not it would make it to its destination, and when it got there, whether it would land on the intended target or go somewhere else. The flints, you were not sure whether or not they would backfire and injure the person holding the flintlock rather than the person on the other end of the barrel. And we have today the situation where a war, and Donald Trump's description, an excursion into the Middle East, has had unintended consequences. He claims recently that no one knew that the Iranians were going to then fire missiles at the Arab neighbors, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, the Emirates. But it seemed obvious to everyone else. And so what we have right now is that whilst the war has been an overwhelming success militarily for the United States and Iran with regards to suppressing the United States and Israel, with regards to suppressing the Iranians' ability to fight, the Iranians' ability to influence the world economy is far greater, in that we now have the Gulf of Hormuz being effectively blockaded, ships afraid to go through there because each one of them is a potential minesweeper. As I heard one military analyst says, every ship is a potential minesweeper. It's just that you don't want to be that one. And so price of oil has gone up. When I tried to fill up my gas tank in the last 24 hours, it was significantly more than it cost me 2 weeks ago. What is the side effect? We have the price of food is likely to go up because the cost of shipping, if one is getting supplies from the Far East, let's say here in the Caribbean, and it comes via the Atlantic, rather than going through the Gulf of Hormuz, it will now be going around the Cape of Africa, a far greater distance, the insurance costs, the freight costs. We also have the potential long-term fallout because we are told that right now fertilizer, much of which comes from that part of the world, is in short supply, which means farmers who are planning to use those products for their next set of crops, they're unavailable. And so the multiplier effect that basically the consequences, as you ask, are far greater than usually obvious at the start of a conflict.
I think Mr. Warner summed everything up there, and I think we can close the program now.
Not at all.
Andre, what's your perspective from a journalist point of view? I know you guys were covering this war, as I have an other side. What have you found since you started covering this? Because recently, Premier Brantley sounded the alarm of the potential fallout. I just want to
Mhm. Well, I think, I mean, and you're right, Mr. Warner summed it up quite nicely, in concise and profound details. I would only say at this point that, when is the world going to get a break? Because we still have the Ukraine war that's ongoing, that has dragged out for more than longer than I think Russia would have wanted it to drag out to. And we've seen that when that conflict started, it produced the same effects that we're seeing now with the Iran war. And so with that war still ongoing and a lot of other, geopolitical issues taking its hold and having its economic effects, this has just exacerbated an already bad situation. To Mr. Warner's point, yes, all of the things that he mentioned, the cost of living and the fact that cost of food and cost of imports will indeed go up and probably have already started. I guess the other angle of the story is, what do we do next? in the Caribbean, we have been dealing with a number of geopolitical issues, many of which have been emanating from the United States and the relationship with um, partners, or rather countries in this part of the world, this part of the region, the Western Hemisphere. Um, we are seeing a reintroduction of the Monroe Doctrine, and some call it the Donroe Doctrine, where the United States essentially has its say in Latin America and the Caribbean. And with all of that, still trying to grapple with that, we just had the CARICOM heads of government meeting. We're just waddling through the effects of that and the outcomes of that, dealing with a humanitarian crisis in Cuba. And now we now have another crisis on our hands with the Iran conflict. It's just one thing after the next, essentially. So essentially, from a news perspective, there's always something to cover as it relates to world issues. And I must make this point before I end on this question, and that is, if you ever believe that news is not interconnected, well, now you know, because as you can see, what is happening thousands of miles away from the Caribbean and from us here in St. Kitts and Nevis is beginning to have impact, and will have an impact on how we live our lives. So it's always important to know what's going on next door, across the Caribbean, over there in the Middle East, because these issues tend to have a ripple effect right across the world.
That is correct. I would believe that many people would have learned from the COVID pandemic, where news, whatever is happening, um, has implications, broader implications for all of us. But before I go to let you guys hear what the IMF said earlier this week, when I questioned um, on it, when I raised a question about the region on it, um, I want to get, do you believe that St. Kitts and Nevis, we in the Federation, are actually prepared for the potential fallout, whether it be food security wise, um, the energy aspect of this geopolitical issue, or generally, um, we talk about the ripple effect, right? And I know, Andre, you did touch on, we had the heads of government meeting. We did not hear anything about the 25 by 25, which has now been pushed to 2030. Do you believe that we in St. Kitts and Nevis have learned, one, and two, are prepared for potential fallout of this nature? Because Mr. Warner talked about the fact that oil prices are now increasing. Um, yes, prices are up. A lot of us like to travel, so that also is going to be a major issue. And then now we are hearing that the airlines are also going to be jacking up their prices, which could then spill into our bread and butter industry, which is the tourism sector.
Yeah. Well, no, to answer your question, a long and short, no. I don't think St. Kitts and Nevis is ready. I don't think any country in the Caribbean, for that matter, is ready. The closest probably would be Guyana, because of its landmass and the fact that it has a much more vibrant agricultural sector than the rest of the region combined. So maybe Guyana might be, and I remember seeing a story, one of the international outlets did a feature on Guyana, essentially saying that Guyana is the only country in the world that can actually feed itself. But that's another subject for another day. But no, I don't think we're ready. We still have a large trade imbalance, and that's probably natural. I don't think that's something that's going to be fixed overnight, or can be fixed permanently, to be quite honest, because St. Kitts and Nevis is a small country with the resources. We don't produce much. Our light manufacturing industry is not as vibrant as it once was, so our exports have declined over the last few years. So for an economy that is mostly service-based, you are going to be importing a lot of inputs, food, and even to be self-sufficient and to create the environment where you produce enough food to feed yourself or to be subsistence is going to require a lot of imports to make that possible. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. What I think we really should be doing, and unfortunately, to make that possible, so at all, or if it did, not in great depth, at the CARICOM heads of government meeting, is how, as a region, we do need to accelerate the CARICOM single market and economy process even greater now more than ever. Because one, to deal with the geopolitical, the issues emanating from the geopolitical happenings in our region cannot be dealt with by one country by itself. It has to be a unified effort. Now, I know the next question you'll probably raise is, well, is CARICOM unified? Because we saw a lot of overthrows out of the heads of government meeting, particularly from the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister, to suggest that there's some form of division in CARICOM. I'm going to put it this way. I recently did an interview with political analyst Peter Wickham, which we aired on our channel recently. And one of the questions I asked him was about that very same thing. Is CARICOM divided? And is it being divided at the worst possible time, essentially? And he said, no, he doesn't think CARICOM is divided, despite what Kamala Prasad-Bissessar said at the opening ceremony. He doesn't think CARICOM is divided. He thinks it's a matter of a difference of opinion. And I tend to agree. I don't think it's a matter of division per se. I think it's just a matter of when it comes to foreign policy, which really truly is not CARICOM's mandate. But when it comes to foreign policy and certain aspects of foreign policy as it relates to what's happening now in the region, CARICOM has a difference of opinion. You have Trinidad and Tobago that has one view. Maybe you have another country or two having that particular view, but the rest of CARICOM have a shared view when it comes to what should happen to Cuba, what should happen to Haiti, what is happening in our region. But unfortunately, while discussing those issues, the bread and butter issue as it stands right now, which is the economy, how are we going to deal with the economic challenges that are coming out of this war and all the other things that are happening, that to me, and at least I have not heard it from the CARICOM heads, but that was not adequately addressed. And if it is not addressed soon, you're going to have a situation where individual countries are going to be struggling to deal with the challenges emanating from crisis that's ahead of us at this point.
Mr. Warner, your take on that particular issue. Are we prepared? Are we preparing the people for the potential fallout in light of the fact that we had the Ukraine and Russia issue? We've been talking for quite some time about food security and reducing our import bill and our dependency on imports. Are we prepared at all in any facet based on somebody who looks at the numbers? Are we anywhere close to preparing people for this particular issue?
Being prepared means having reserves. Being prepared means having a plan. So, for example, if we talk about hurricane preparedness or earthquake preparedness, it suggests that in the event of a dangerous hurricane, we have food supplies in our homes, that our roofs are securely built, that our houses are hurricane strengthened or earthquake proofed to whatever degree that can be made so. Being prepared means that if, as a result of that earthquake or hurricane, the economy is unable to function normally, that we will probably have the equivalent of an extra tank of gas stored somewhere around our homes, that we'll have food, and that we'll have money to keep us going for the next 3 months until things sort out. That's what being prepared means. It means having reserves to cope with circumstances and also having a plan. Being prepared means in the event that the earthquake shakes, what action do you take? Are you one of those who will run out of the house? Or are you one who will dive under the nearest heavy table or standing the nearest sturdy doorway? That is something we don't have. We don't have the resources, financial. Most of our economies are in difficult circumstances. We don't have the financial resources to be prepared. We don't have food reserves because, in the case of St. Kitts and Nevis, we don't feed ourselves. We depend on imports from neighboring islands and from North America and China primarily, in the case of processed foods. And we don't have a plan. If you listen to the powers that be and ask them, well, what is your plan in the event? Well, okay, we know things could happen. is there a file that you opened up? Was there a folder that you took down from the shelf? Was there an area in your computer database you went to and said, in the event that there's an oil price crisis, what do we implement? We don't have such things. And so long and short, we are not prepared. We are therefore reactive. And when reactive, it's very difficult to do, I shouldn't say the right thing, but to respond in the most efficient manner if one is being merely reactive.
And that is a very critical point you're making there, because most of the developed countries have over the years created strategic plans in the event that any of these situations will pop up. That is why they have the oil reserves, food reserves, and so forth. But I want you guys to listen to what the IMF said in terms of its projection. But we'll hear that after we take this break here from our partners. And then, because I think it was a critical aspect of the global economy and the potential fallout that we can all see as a result. I mean, from the highest level to the smallest man in the streets, everybody will likely feel this aspect. But we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean. Keep it green. Vitamalt bottle returns. Your bottles, your cash, your island.
And we are back. Sorry for that technical challenge there. Um, Before we jump into the clip, because we have a little bit of technical issues in the background, um, Mr. Warren, I want somebody with the numbers. You know, last week on the program when we raised this particular issue, um, someone made the suggestion that in order to cushion as or one of the solutions to cushioning this impact for bus drivers and potentially for the broader federation in terms of energy the electricity bills is the possibility of reducing the taxes on the fuel imports and so forth. And two questions come to mind when we talk about this. One, we're losing revenue. The government, rather, is going to be losing revenues from that particular tax if we decide to lower that tax. But also, do we have the fiscal space based on the fact that last year we saw a reduce in the revenues garnered from the CBI program? Are we in any position to be able to do that?
One of the challenges whenever people say reduce the tax in order to lower the burden on consumers, on residents, is what services are you willing to give up if you reduce the tax, and therefore if you reduce the sources of income that governments will use to provide the goods and services to the populace. And we don't have it. Of course, if it becomes necessary, whether for political or social and economic reasons, to provide such cushions, we then have to cope with the fact that we'll go further into debt. In the year 2024, our budget deficit was $260 million. We collected $260 million less than we spent. Let's put it the other way around. We spent $260 million more than we collected. In 2025, the first reports are that we spent $300 million more than we collected. So in 2 years, we've spent $500 million more than we collected. Our total budget is just over $1 billion. And so if in 2 years your deficit is 50% of that, that is a challenge. And so yes, it would be a very good thing if government could somehow provide some kind of cushions. But I don't see government having the facility to do it, because then you have to give up something. What are we going to give up? Are we willing to do with roads in worse conditions? Are we willing to do with schools having fewer supplies? Are we willing to do with going to the hospital and them not being able to provide us the quality of service that we expect and deserve? What do we give up? If someone can give me the answer to that question, what do we sacrifice? I would be in favor of saying, let's take that path.
And that reliance on our CDI program has really been, something that burdened to an extent on St. Kitts and Nevis. And the Prime Minister has said, and the previous administration did hint, that it's good to move away from that particular pillar. But Andre, what's your view on this whole discussion surrounding potentially either lowering the taxes or, altogether probably just doing some tax structure in terms of the import, let's say, of oil and gas and so forth? Because we don't have Cuba, well, not Cuba, we don't have Venezuela at this point, to say that we can reach out to them, or and has not necessarily begun, this whole discussion of potentially assisting fellow member states of the Caribbean region.
Yeah. Well, I think Mr. Warner hit the nail on the head when he said that, well, okay, yes, we could look at doing that, but where else would government get the money from? So it's actually a twofold situation for me. I think one, you spoke about the CBI. The CBI is not generating as much as it used to, and as such, the reliance on the CBI or looking to that as a major revenue generation, as in times past, is gone at this point in time, and it's hard to see it rebounding anytime soon. So what we will have to do, and I think maybe the government may have hinted to this in recent times and in the past as well, is finding new avenues of diversifying the economy. At this stage, the discussion shouldn't be about diversifying the economy. The discussion should really be pursuing those avenues of diversification, because we're in a situation where, as you pointed out, as we've been discussing this morning, we are potentially heading into an inflationary situation where the price of oil and as such, the price of everything else is going to increase. If you reduce the tax burden on the public, which would be welcome by everyone, including myself, I don't think anybody would not accept a reduction of taxes to ease the burden on themselves. At the same time, however, you will ask yourself the question, and Mr. Warner asked, where is the money coming from to fulfill or to fill the gap that will be left with those reduction in taxes? And it clearly, there has to be other ways to stimulate the economy, to get the economy going, to get the revenues that government needs to fill those gaps. And at the same time, even providing jobs and opportunities for persons, for especially those who are unemployed. And as a result of that, that helps to generate, that multiplier effect, money being spent back into the economy and keep the economy going at a time when, the world economy may be headed into a tailspin.
One of the challenges that our economy faces is that our tax system to support government goods and services is based on consumption. It is not based on people's incomes. And so, whereas in 98% of the countries of the world who have an income tax system, and you could somehow stimulate the economy sometimes by reducing the tax burden on individuals, we don't have that option in St. Kitts. Someone who earns $300,000 a year doesn't suffer or make any greater sacrifice than someone who earns $20,000 a year. As a matter of fact, the person who earns $20,000 makes a far greater sacrifice than the $300,000 tax income earner, because our taxes, the vast bulk of our taxes, are based on people buying things, people spending money. If they don't spend money, government doesn't get any money, as opposed to if people earn money, they get money. Now, when you have the income tax system, what happens is that if you reduce the income tax rate, the income tax burden, the theory is that people will free up and spend money elsewhere and do other things. When it is based on consumption, and instead of the tax on, let's say, a tire for your car, or the tax on some hair products is reduced, you don't go out and buy more tires because the tax on car tires has gone down. And are you going to go to the hairdresser more frequently? Well, you might, but consumption doesn't, you don't get a boost in revenues because you've reduced the taxes. You get a reduction in income for the state. And that is something we really have no discretionary power over at this time. As Andre pointed out, our citizen by investment revenues are, paltry compared to what they were. For example, the last year for which we have definite figures, 2024, they were projected at $600 million. We actually collected just over $300 million, half of what it was supposed to be. As a matter of fact, it was supposed to be the bulk of the revenues. We were running something like over 60% of every dollar spent by the state came from the CBI program. Well, the unsustainability of the program has proved itself in that now, because of pressures from outside, from the United States, Europe, and other places, our citizen by investment program is bringing in far less money. We have no cushion. We have no cushion. Our consumers expected to spend, will have more money to spend, but it, as we said earlier, what will the government do in its place? Do we want to go back to the late 2000-aughts, as the English called it, 2008, 2010, when the debt was taking up a substantial portion of government expenditure? I don't know. Back in those good old days, we often speak of the good old days, which they were not in this case. The equivalent tax burden to every person in this country, every adult, every child, was approximately $60,000 was each person's share of the debt. I'm not sure what it is today, but I think it is It is far less. Do we want to go back to that situation? I don't think so. But if somehow we don't get miracles, we could be headed in that direction.
Let me ask this, Mr. Warner, quickly, just to get you, I want to pick your brain on this. The government recently, or Parliament, would have started the process of establishing a sovereign wealth fund some time ago, where some of the monies earned from CBI would be going to this, towards this. Is it too little too late? One, and two, what other areas could we actually pursue as a nation to stimulate the economy without having to increase the debt?
There's a saying, it's never too late to do the right thing. It's too little and it's late. It's not too late. The challenge about this is that the Sovereign Wealth Fund is still in its planning stage. It is not going anywhere yet. And you can only save out of revenues. And the primary source of the Sovereign Wealth Fund is supposed to be the CBI program. And the CBI program is bringing in fewer revenues. And so one wonders whether or not the goals will be achievable. Will government say, look, I know we are committed to putting in X% of our CBI revenues into the fund, but things are so bad. Could we ask Parliament for a waiver this year, and instead of putting in X%, we put in Y, because we actually need that thing? So the Sovereign Wealth Fund is something should have been done a long time ago. If I could just give an example. The wealthiest country in terms of reserves is a country called Norway. And Norway, when they discovered they had this bonanza called oil within their economic waters, they said, we will put a certain proportion of every single dollar earned from oil production into the fund. And the fund was just tough. It said, look, you cannot spend any of the money that you put in. You can only spend a percentage of the money that it earns. So if you put in $100,000 this year, I think the numbers were something like you could only spend a maximum of 10% of the income, meaning if you're putting $100,000 and you earn a 5% interest on it, that's $5,000 interest. But you could only spend 10% of the 5,000. So therefore, you could only spend 500. So now it's $104,095 you have in the fund to go forward. If our wealth fund doesn't get a similar thing, we'll have a challenge. As a result of which, their sovereign wealth fund today is over $1 trillion. Per capita, Norwegians are the richest people in the world. We don't count the Arab nations because the money there is really owned by the sheikhs and the emirs and all those people. It's not owned by the people. Norway, per capita, is the wealthiest country in the world. We have multi-billionaires in the United States and other parts of Europe and in Russia, etc. But that does not represent the wealth of the ordinary people. The people of Norway, by their sovereign wealth fund, are the richest people in the world. We are nowhere on that prospect. Now, what are our alternatives? We need first to cut back on the amount of money we spend on that most vital of things for our survival, food. We import far too great a portion of our food consumption. And it also has to do with it's a broad issue. It has to do with our diet. Far too much of our food consumption is in the form of processed foods. So we've become captive to our appetite for processed foods rather than fresh fruits and vegetables. We have become captive that we have to import those foods and vegetables from neighboring islands or from elsewhere, the notion that you could go into a store in St. Kitts and find a mango from Mexico as opposed to a mango from Nevis is slightly absurd. As a matter of fact, the mango from Mexico should be of such a prohibitive price, not because of taxes, but because the ability to produce mangoes in St. Kitts is so much greater that it would be far more a greater incentive to buy the local mango, the local whatever it may be. And so that is one of the things that we have to start with. Of course, that in itself has its challenges. The farmers complain about the monkeys who are, are more than the human population of St. Kitts. The farmers complain about other wild pests. The farmers complain about people who reap food that they don't grow, that they didn't plant. And so the state has to be far more proactive in promoting us consuming. And by consuming more of what we produce, it means the money flowing out of the country for that purpose will be reduced, and in other ways it would benefit. The development of small industry, development of small entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, will also go some way towards that. After all, we, as you pointed out earlier, our small manufacturing base has shrunk considerably, and so our exports from that area are far less. The tourism sector is growing. The tourism sector is still somewhat resilient, but as you also pointed out earlier, Andre, subject to things like natural disasters, subject to things like price changes in oil and cruise costs and airline tickets, etc. That itself is vulnerable as far as feeding visitors to the country. And even in that sector, we sometimes see people say, well, what is unique about St. Kitts, Nevis? They have sand just like Antigua and St. Martin and Anguilla. And they have palm trees and things like that. But what is unique why they would come here as opposed to other things? I guess it has to be our customer service when the visitors get here. But I must admit, I am somewhat at this time at a loss to identify clear areas where we can replace the monies that we get from other things in order to boost our local economy. It is so based on consumption that is a challenge.
I wanted to ask you though, on that point quickly, before we hear from the IMF, how much is the fact that we're paying and a lot of the subsidies that we're providing, whether it be electricity costs, water costs, we have a lot of social programs, are eating away into our future plans, as you touched on the sovereign wealth fund. How is all of this playing into us thinking long term? Okay, if we're making $1 billion, 50 cents out of the dollar or 60 cents of the dollar will be going to the sovereign wealth fund, that we still have to talk about 40, $50, 50 cents out of that dollar has to be factored into these other social programs.
The challenge we have in St. Kitts, Nevis, is that we are living a middle-class lifestyle on a less than middle-class income. What is one of the areas of our economy that has grown amazingly in the last 10 years? It's the courier services, the e-zones, you name the others. I'm not either advertising or being selective, but just name just comes quickly to mind. Those people now have fleets of vehicles as ubiquitous as Amazon delivery vans in the United States, because we find it convenient to buy stuff that we normally would have bought from our local stores or local supermarkets or local hardware outlets. We now import them. Well, what we are doing is we are sending money out of the country. So the dollars that we earn from the visitors, we immediately send those same dollars straight back out, back to the place from where the visitors came. And so we just don't have any cushion in which to make this thing. Now, with regards to our social services, there is the problem. Our politicians have made us dependent, and it's our fault. We have asked for it and they've delivered, and we get free in parentheses, we get free stuff from the state every single day. A child is born and is delivered almost free at the hospital. There's no demand for any kind of, if you don't pay, we're going to keep sending you a bill every month for the maternity delivery fees. The child goes to preschool, it's free. The child goes to primary school, high school, and now our tertiary college, free. They don't pay any monies to get in there. Tuition, everything is provided free. Now, free means someone else is paying for it through some other means. We had in recent years, handouts of different types. We have subsidized housing. We have water. This is one of my greatest gripes in this country. We pay for water the same we were paying over 20 years ago. You name me something in any supermarket, in any hardware store, you name me something anywhere that costs the same today that it did 20 years ago. I can name you one thing: a plot at the Springfield Cemetery. It is still the same as it was 50 years ago. But then that's a different issue. Let me give you the water thing, because this is really something that just demonstrates we talk about planning, our forward thinking. We just put on stream a desalination plant. We are told the running costs will be about $20 million per year. We are told that about 50% of the running cost will be towards electricity, which it needs to power the plant. We are not carrying up the cost of electricity. We are told that the cost of running the plant of producing water is about the same, as far as the structure is concerned, as the Marriott desalination plant. I do not know whether we will continue to be purchasing water from the Marriott, but let me give you some figures. We, over recent years, and it may still be continuing, we buy water from the Marriott desalination plant to provide to the consumers in Frigate Bay. We buy that water at the price of $30 per 1,000 gallons. What does the St. Kitts consumer of water pay to the state for water? Whether you live in Frigate Bay, you live in Sadlers, you live in Virchilds, you pay $7.50 per 1,000 gallons of water. You pay $20, of which $2 is for the meter they claim, and you pay $18 for up to 2,500 gallons of water. $7.50 for 1,000 gallons of water. So the state buys it for $30 and sells it for $7.50. Now, you can't tell the people of Frigate Bay, you must pay more for your water, or at least it will be politically untenable to tell the people of Frigate Bay, you must pay more for your water. So we've put a water desalination plant online, and we have heard no talk about how you're going to pay for this thing. We've heard no talk about carrying the price of water. A previous minister of water made a pledge that the price of water will never go up under his watch. And it sounded very much to me like a previous prime minister saying, that the sugar industry will close over my dead body. We haven't seen the casket as yet or the funeral, But we know what happened to that. The price of water must go up. You cannot continue to subsidize things. Was it a couple years ago, this administration removed that subsidy on the price of fuel for our electricity supply. So every one of us, those who can afford and those who can't afford, continues to get the electricity subsidized. And therefore, when you subsidize something, whether it is education, it's health, it's water, it's electricity, whatever it is, you have to get the money from somewhere in order to subsidize someone paying for it. And so what we probably need to do in St. Kitts, and it is very difficult, it's very difficult. It's politically almost untenable to ask the people of St. Kitts Nevis to do this, because you will most assuredly lose the next election. If you say to this, you've got to live within your means. We have a $12.50 minimum per hour minimum wage, one of the highest in the regions, and it is something to be proud of. But it also reflects the cost of living. It's not $12.50 because people, have this extra bonanza they put in their savings account every week, every month. It is $12.50 because the cost of living in St. Kitts is what it is, and part of it, what it is that the state, to provide all of its services to the people that the people expect, are not paying their way. And someone has to pay for it, either the people who will lend us money down the road or something else. But Mr. Huey, this is not an overnight answer, because this one is going to be also politically difficult. We have to grow our population. We have to grow our population. Guyana, whose population shrank to just about 500,000 people about 10, 15 years ago because of the economic straits of the country, their population is now back to 1 million people. It has never been that high before, okay? And therefore, our population is unchanged in 100 years. The highest the population of St. Kitts Nevis ever was at the 1960 census, 65 years ago. Our population is not growing. We need more people, but you cannot get more people overnight, because if every woman went out and of childbearing age went out and got pregnant this weekend, it will still be 16 years before those people enter the workforce. Therefore, the importation of labor might be necessary. But again, there's the political and social pushback about these foreigners.
WINN.
About them. And so some of the answers are not short term. They're not going to be done in 26, 27, or by 2027 when the next election comes around. There are things that have to be planned down the road.
Okay. Thanks for that, Mr. Warner. We have to take a break now. We drew for a break. And then when we come back, we'll continue with more discussions here on Inside the News.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Don't throw those bottles away. Turn them into money today. Vitamalt bottles equal cash in your pocket. It's super easy. Just take those empty Vitamalt bottles to any Cara Brewery distribution truck or any drinks depot in St. Kitts and Nevis. We're keeping our beautiful Twin Island paradise clean. Vitamalt bottles equal cash back. Keep it clean. Keep it green. Vitamalt bottle returns. Your bottles, your cash, your island.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust to secure your investment. You need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us. TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind. You're always safe with us.
People make the world go
inside the news. As a promise, I want to give you a little bit of what the IMF said surrounding this issue of the potential economic fallout, both for the global economy as well as the regional, the Caribbean economies. I'll start give you a little bit of what the director of communications said earlier this week when I asked her about the potential fallout at a press conference.
Saying that, you know, conflicts upend lives and livelihoods, and our hearts do go out to people who are experiencing this. Now, turning to the economic impact, we have already seen significant disruptions. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has cut off access to roughly 20% of the world's oil and seaborne LNG supplies. Energy infrastructure in the Gulf region and Iran has been damaged, and this has disrupted oil and gas production. So now when we think about the channels through which these disruptions can affect the global economy, regional economies, and individual economies, let me point to three main channels that we're keeping our eye on. The first is commodity prices. And of course there, the impact on commodity prices is going to be determined by how long the Strait of Hormuz is closed and the extent of damage to regional hydrocarbon production facilities. Oil and gas prices, as you know, have increased by more than 50% over the last month to over $100 a barrel for Brent. In addition, fertilizer shipments have been disrupted, and this, along with transportation disruptions, raise risks that we could see increases in food prices, and those could be substantial, again, depending on the duration and intensity. And then, of course, for individual countries and regions, the specific impact of these commodity price increases are going to depend on the specific circumstances of each country. Now, turning to the second channel, which is kind of inflation and inflation expectations. If prolonged, higher energy prices will lead to higher headline inflation. And then I think what we and I think central banks are also going to be keeping a careful eye on is then whether there are what we would call second round effects on broader inflation, and also very importantly, whether there would be effects on inflation expectations. So this is another channel through which we may see effects. For the global economy as a whole, when we look historically at energy price shocks, kind of a broad rule of thumb is that for every 10% increase in the oil price, if it were to persist, let's say throughout the rest of this year, this could lead to a 40 basis point increase in global headline inflation and a fall in global output of between 0.1 and 0.2%. So that's a rule of thumb, and that is for a persistent increase in the oil price. And now let me turn to the third channel, which is financial conditions. Here we have seen reactions in global markets. Global stock prices have declined. Bond yields have increased across a range of countries, including in advanced economies like the US, the UK, and Europe, but also in emerging and developing countries. Volatility has increased. The US dollar has appreciated, and the currencies of a number of emerging economies have weakened. So this is how we see, I would say, the picture now and the channels. The overall impact, of course, is going to depend very much on the duration and intensity of the conflict. We will provide an updated assessment in our World Economic Outlook in April, which will be comprehensive at the individual country level and also for global and regional economies. Now, turning to some of the kind of regional and country-specific questions. There was a question about the GCC. So what we see in the GCC is that there was a question about the GCC on the duration, extent, and intensity of the crisis.
What
Our
was said.
preliminary assessment is that growth is expected to weaken. Fiscal and external imbalances will be affected. And for some countries, and it depends very much on where the country's ability to resume exports. For some countries, higher energy prices could fully or partially offset lower production. And for other countries, that is not going to be the case. I would also add that most GCC countries do have substantial policy buffers. They have undertaken recent reforms to strengthen policy frameworks, promote economic diversification, upgrade logistics infrastructure, and all of this has helped enhance resilience of these countries. And finally, in terms of the impact on financial conditions and markets, we have seen, like in the global economy, an impact on equity markets, which have declined, and increasing bond spreads in GCC countries. Let me now turn to some of the other regions. I want to get to Jermeen's question on small states and the Caribbean. So on the Caribbean and small states in general, and for all of our members, we are closely monitoring developments, including, I think, through the channels that you mentioned, Jermeen. So we're looking at, potential spillovers to countries for how global commodity prices, and especially energy prices and food prices, may affect economies. And all of this is something that we will obviously have a full report of in our upcoming WEO in April. I think for the Caribbean, like many other regions, what is going to play an important role is whether countries are oil importers or oil exporters, and or energy importers or energy exporters. For countries that are energy importers, they may face, again, if the conflict is prolonged, they may face pressures on their balance of payments. For countries that are oil exporters, their balance of payments may improve because of higher prices, so we may see a differential effect there. Changes to global financial conditions are likely to affect all countries similarly. If financial conditions tighten, as they have, and if they stay tighter, that could affect many countries around the world, including those in the Caribbean. And of course, for countries, small states and those in the Caribbean that are very tourism dependent, we will be, of course, monitoring carefully how tourism flows evolve. Similarly, for countries that are very dependent on remittances, we will be also needing to look carefully at remittances. So first, we are engaging very actively with our membership. We are talking to them about how we see, as I explained here, how we see some of the impacts on the global economy, but also asking them, how can we best support them at this time, using the full range of tools available to us, including through our policy advice, capacity development, and also financial support as needed. We have engaged with finance ministers and central bank governors in many countries and regions. We've also engaged with regional institutions to discuss and share perspectives on the implications of the conflict, and again, how the fund can best provide support. Right now, what we're seeing is countries are most interested in what is our assessment, both of how the global economy, regional economies, and their individual countries may be affected. Our managing director has said recently that in an uncertain world, we do see more countries often turning to the fund for support. We stand ready to provide that support as needed. Right now, we have not received any formal requests for emergency financing. But of course, as I said, as the situation evolves, as countries reassess their financing needs and their policy options, we stand ready to support them using all of the tools that are available to us.
And yes, there you had it. The IMF giving the early assessment based on what we've been discussing earlier. Andre, what were your takeaways from what Julie Kozak, Director of Communication, had to say?
Well, I mean, I don't think she's saying anything that we don't know. The question is, though, and I don't think she could definitively state, because as she said clearly that, the countries in the Caribbean that are tourism dependent, that they will be closely monitoring, because of course it's a very fluid situation. It's not set in stone what will happen. We've been through this before, and I think in many cases, I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic, I think, is a good example. The Caribbean has survived. For a year or two or so, we were crippled. The economies, some countries are still, I mean, most countries are still suffering the effects of COVID. So going back to my earlier point that, the world hasn't caught a break. Since 2020, it has been one crisis after another. While coming out of COVID-19, you have now the Ukraine-Russia war, and now we're seeing our conflict now developing in the Middle East, which clearly will have effects. And even prior to that, there were other conflicts in the Middle East that also impacted gas prices. So long and short, what the IMF is stating is imminent, and it's something that we have to closely monitor, because it's not set in stone. It's very fluid. We don't know what's going to happen next week. We don't know how far this conflict is going to escalate, if it does escalate. And, the impacts could be greater than what we're anticipating now. It could also be less if things were to change. So we just have to watch and see what happens.
And Mr. Warning, your takeaway?
That lady is far better equipped than I could ever be to give us the outlook globally. She may not be as au fait with the local economic conditions, but everything she says sounds spot on. And remember, many of the predictions, or I shouldn't say predictions, many of the projections would have been based on data that would have been collected before the current war that's in progress. And so the analysis would be in its own, as a result of this, be highly speculative as opposed to be predictable.
But when we talk about all of this, how does the Caribbean region itself, and coming down to St. Kitts' level, how do we begin, and I know we've been talking about it here, how do we begin the discussion with the people of the region? And I'm excluding Guyana from this, because to an extent, Guyana is going to benefit significantly from the increased oil sales, right? In terms of price. But how do we begin this whole discussion about getting people to better understand the importance of, and I don't want to say understanding politics, but how do we get the people to understand that we need to make a shift away from the current status quo as it is? St. Kitts and Nevis, for example, is transitioning to renewable energy. We talk about the pillars of the economy that we want to diversify and so forth. How do we begin this entire discourse? Because I'm not guessing that we are actually in a position right now and people understand fisherman, the bus driver, we only discuss these issues when they are going to impact us or we feel it in our pocket.
And that precisely, Jermaine, is exactly the entry point that needs to be used, that you just raised. The fact that people only discuss these issues if it affects the bottom line. As it stands right now, and Mr. Warner spoke so eloquently about the situation in St. Kitts and Nevis, that a lot of the services that are being offered, we live in a very highly subsidized society and economy, and no leader, no prime minister, no government now or in the future is going to change at any time soon. Because as Mr. Warner rightfully points out, there are going to be political consequences. So So, to be politically expedient, any leader or any government that comes into office will steer clear from doing things like reintroducing or introducing personal income tax or anything that will take away some of the benefits that the country is benefiting from now. At the same time, you spoke about, for example, having the discussion on renewable energy and for us to shift towards that. Now, St. Kitts and Nevis, at least we've been hearing a lot of talk about geothermal. Drilling is supposed to happen sometime this year, so we're waiting to see that come to fruition. Dominica, and I must stick up in here, Dominica announced, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago, that they're going to, all being well, they're going to be switching on their turbines at the end of this month, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So they've certainly gone a far way in terms of developing geothermal, but it has been quite a while. What is clear is that when it comes to renewable energy, it is not something that can be implemented right away. I was listening to a BBC podcast this week, BBC Business Podcast, where they're speaking about the energy crisis, and they were going back to 1990 with the situation in the Gulf, with the Gulf War and how that impacted gas prices back then. And one of the experts who spoke on the podcast essentially said that while renewable energies is the way to go and should be the way to we should be gearing towards that, it's not something that can be easily implemented right away. So, which means that we are still going to be dependent on oil and fuel as the main source of energy. And even when renewable energy becomes a main source of energy for us, because of it's fairly new, it's probably going to be volatile as well, if in terms of having stable energy, you still would need to have some resource of oil while you're developing and building up renewable energy. So it's not something that's going to happen right away. But like with everything, it has to be a gradual process. So in our case, we're talking about geothermal on Nevis. That is going to take a while. We saw how long it took Dominica to get to the stage they are now, because they've been developing geothermal for years now, and it's not just yesterday they started. So we will have to have that discussion while at the same time looking at some of our priorities, as Mr. Warner pointed out earlier before the break. We have to begin looking at population increase. Again, it's not a very exciting topic to talk about, not a politically expedient topic to talk about, but it is something that's absolutely necessary if we're going to expand our economies of scale and by extension, put ourselves in a much more competitive position to sustain the economy and to sustain the nation. Because as it stands right now, it's highly and heavily subsidized, primarily because of all the issues that a small country with a small population like St. Kitts and Nevis has to deal with.
Mr. Warner, as somebody who deals with projections and so forth, I'm looking at a CNN report which says, Trump is considering scaling down the war. Let's say the war ends at the end of March. Do you believe within the short realm of discussion, that we will see our challenges or projected challenges to ease in terms of fuel prices, gas prices, and so forth, in terms of the impact, or this is something, despite it being maybe short-lived, could potentially still impact us 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road?
The effects of the oil prices today, even if the war were to end at midnight tonight, will still be there 6 months from now. Why? The prices you hear being quoted today is not for oil being consumed today. It is for oil that will probably be delivered in 3, sometimes 6 months from now. And so believe it or not, even though the price of gas that we are using this week has gone up, that oil wasn't pumped out of the ground 3 weeks ago. That oil wasn't pumped out of the ground a month ago. That oil might have been pumped out of the ground, 3 months ago, but its price may have been set 6 months earlier than that, because oil deals in something that they call futures, where you buy today to deliver tomorrow. It's like saying to a farmer, I'm going to promise you today to pay you $10 for a dozen eggs, and you'll deliver them to me for music festival. And so I am guaranteed that when music festival come, I will pay no more than $10 for my eggs. If the hens don't deliver, I'd have to go and find someone to provide me eggs in order to deliver you your eggs. And so the likelihood is at least 6 months from now that any change will take place. Those ships first have to get out of the Straits of Hormuz. The prices of the insurance and all these other things will have to come back down. And so prices tend to go up quickly and fall slowly. On the other aspect of it, what Andrew was speaking of earlier, it is the case of we need longer planning. We cannot run an economy based on being elected at the next election. No politician in St. Kitts and Nevis, no politician in the region is going to say to you, elect me and I will ask you to tighten your belt. I will ask you to pay more in taxes. I will deliver less to you in services so that in 10 years' time we'll have a wealthier country and we'll be healthier and better educated. It is not going to happen because every politician wants to get either re-elected or elected at the next election. Our election cycles are 4.5 years at most. And so it's not going to happen, sadly. What we need are leaders, not politicians. I don't foresee a change in the short term, but I have hope for the long term. I do have hope that the younger people in our society will appreciate the mistakes that those of my age and others have made and learn from them and have a different path in spite of what the politicians do in their wisdom or lack thereof. You see, we don't say it because it is somehow not politically convenient. But we live in a socialist country where the state provides a vast proportion of the resources that we need for day-to-day existence at subsidized prices and leave us with the money in our pockets to spend discretionarily on getting a car, having the latest iPhone, looking unrecognizable when we go to our birthday celebration in 3 weeks' time or whatever it is. We are allowed to spend monies on those things because the state is providing for us the things that we need, but saying, don't worry, daddy will take care of you, mommy will take care of you. Just make sure that daddy and mommy are the ones who are still in office at the day after the next election. Until we rid ourselves of that dependency as a people on handouts, of which we are ourselves paying for, but indirectly, the outlook will be poor, but it is not hopeless.
But how do we get the people to understand, especially the next generation? Because
Education. Our education system has to be structured about being functional. Not an education whereby you boast that you have 15 subjects and you cannot write a proper job resume. Not an education based that you have 15 subjects. And if I said to you that I'm going to give you a 10% increase in your wage next month, you cannot instantly know how much more money you'll be getting next month. Not an education that say you have 15 subjects, and yet if you ask a contractor to come to your house and give you an estimate as to how much it will cost to put tiles on your kitchen wall, you have no concept of whether or not he's overcharging you when he tells you how much the tiles will cost. Because even though you did all of the maths, you cannot figure out quickly, well, if my kitchen wall is 8 feet by 10 feet and each tile is 1 foot square, how many tiles at $3 per tile will it take to cover that wall? An education system that is not designed to equip people to operate within the real world means that we will be at the mercy of those who are more functionally better educated than we are. We'll be at the mercy of people who price goods and services greater than they should be, and we'll be at the mercy of our own whims and fancies of going and attaching ourselves to whatever is the latest fad about getting involved in this or that. An education system that is designed to educate people for life as opposed to educating people to have degrees, have subjects, having letters after their names.
And that's
I think part of the problem with that, though, Mr. Warner, sorry, Jeremy, but part of the problem with that, though, has a lot to do with how we're cultured. In this part of the world, we're cultured that you go to school, you get a degree, you get your education, and you get a job. We're not cultured to be innovators and to be able to. You spoke earlier at length, Mr. Warner, about the fact that in the St. Kitts Nevis economy, and it's not, and I wouldn't just leave it just to St. Kitts Nevis. I think in most of the Caribbean economies, we are we're consumers. We're primarily consumers, and you don't find more innovators coming out of some of our countries. You do have, but not at the rate at which we can produce. So I do believe that, in addition to being educated to be to be efficient and to function well in our economies and to live, not just to say you have X amount of subjects or you have a doctorate degree or a master's degree, but rather to be able to function. If you go to places like China and you look at other parts of Singapore and other places, you will realize that the education system there is structured in a way to allow our graduates, people coming out of school, not just with a university degree, but being innovators. Because that's one of the ways in which you can grow the economy, is to be able to be innovative to the point where you're now producers of things that others are consuming and not just being primarily consumers. I could use a very simple example. One of the things that a lot of persons around the world, young people in particular, are grabbing onto and are forging ahead with and creating their own economies, their own livelihoods from, is digital content, creating digital content. Right now, we have some limitations in St. Kitts and Nevis that are due primarily to copyright laws, which prevents us from monetizing our content on social media. Hopefully, that is being changed, or it will change in the not too distant future. I think some efforts have started in that regard. Now, if you look at, for example, the internet packages that are being offered by some of our internet providers locally, oftentimes it is geared, they would advertise, or they will say to you, you pay X amount and you get this amount internet speed. Oftentimes when they refer to the internet speed that you're paying for, it is most of the times relating to the download speed. The download speed is great when you're consuming content, when you're watching Netflix, when you're watching Disney Plus, whatever you're watching on TV, or whatever you're using it to do. It is geared towards consumption. Ask a question when that is said. What is the upload speed like? And you get a far different story. This upload speed would be significantly lower than the download speed. And as a creator, I cannot effectively create and stream my content without proper internet speed, with proper upload speed. So we now should begin gearing our people to say, okay, when you're purchasing internet, if you're in the business of creating content, if you're in the business of trying to create a digital market, upload speed is going to be very important. And it's not just enough now to say, well, I have 100 megabits or 300 megabits download speed and only 20 upload speed. What can I create with that? Okay, so again, it goes back to the point of, changing our mindset to be creators and innovators as opposed to just consumers.
Okay, start to interject, Andre. My guest is on this morning. I don't want you guys to leave. I want you to join us because this is going to tie into what we're discussing here. Right? We'll take a break, and when on the other side, I'll let her introduce herself, and we'll begin the discussion from there.
Can you hear me?
Okay. We're having some challenges again. Yes.
Okay. I thought we were taking a break. Are you guys taking a break? And then after the information, you come back?
You know how technology is sometimes.
Okay.
But I'll let you introduce yourself right now, and then we're going to jump into the discussion. I just want to give a brief intro of
Okay.
of you. I don't want to butcher your name as we say in the Caribbean. I'll let you introduce yourself in terms of your name. My guest is a Nigerian-born, America-based writer, author, and entrepreneur whose literary work engages critically with themes of historical consciousness, cultural identity, and socio-political transformation. Writing is situated at the intersection of literature and social inquiry. So, I didn't give all of your bio there.
That's fine.
I'll let you.
Really. Thanks for having me, Jermaine. I appreciate it. My name is Abi Imbia Asu. I was born and raised in Nigeria. I immigrated to the US for college about 19 years ago. And I currently live as a nomad. I'm one of those few persons that believe that we should have a world free of borders. Sadly, it's not like that, but as a black person, trying to navigate public spaces and enjoy the God's big green earth, it's always a challenge because we all know that black people do not have the same accessibility as other ethnic groups, other races in this world to navigate the world like others. So I love I love the world. So currently I don't have a home. I just hop from one place to another. That's what I like to say. I'm liking it. I'm enjoying it, but I still spend majority of my time in the US.
Okay, so I have with me a fellow colleague journalist, Andre Huey, and I have also accountant Schneidman Warner. Right,
Hi
you're
Andre.
born.
Hi Mr. Herner. Good morning.
Good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
Uh,
Before I jump into what I want to ask you, I want to ask you this question because
mhm.
something that St. Kitts and Nevis has been doing, which is Antonio from the broader Caribbean, we're trying to reach out to Mother Africa to bridge this gap. You were in St. Kitts and Nevis recently. Uh,
Yes.
how do you see the cultures crossing over and somebody from Africa been living in the United States? You
Yes.
were in. How does that make you feel? And do you believe that there's a connection that can be made between St. Kitts and Nigeria?
Yes. So first of all, thank you for that question. I just want to add that from when I was a young girl, a kid, I really loved literature. Literature was something that was my escape, my go-to, something I read whenever I had free, anything like that. So, sorry, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay, good.
I can hear you.
So, it has been a dream of mine.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You
Sorry.
can hear me? Oh, I'm so sorry. So, I said when I was growing up in Nigeria and during my early teenage years, when I started exploring literature, I had a map in my house and I saw the Caribbean. I was very sorry. I didn't know who lived there. I didn't know what the people were like. I longed for a connection. I really wanted, and I didn't have any. And I think I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, what people live in the Caribbean? And they were, I was like, oh God, and people live there. So a second encounter I had with the Caribbean was somebody bought my younger brother a gift, and it was like a shirt that says, "It's always sunny in Barbados," and there were coconuts in it. And that was such a moment for me because I was like, oh, that place has coconuts. It's probably tropical. It's almost like it's great. So I really wanted, I was like, when I grow up, I'm going to go there. So when I started learning, when I grew up, it was such a thrill for me to go, oh, there are black people in the Caribbean. I remember this was maybe a while ago when Google started research. I was like, oh, they're mostly black people. These are my people. So I finally made that trip. I was so excited. And for a place where I'm excited about, a place I really want to connect, I want to live like the local, experience what they experience and see how I can connect with it. I believe I'm one of those people. So after doing like research on the Caribbean islands, not too long ago, we started something like the carnival you guys have, which is definitely something borrowed from the Caribbean. We started this carnival culture during the holidays, and I was like, wow, this is great. And also, I also noticed that, like in Nigeria, especially the entertainment industry is huge. Have lots of artists. But one thing I noticed is that, like, the Caribbean is kind of very far, and due to travel restrictions, transit visa, it makes it difficult to connect. But believe me, I've had instances where I really go all out, and I'm like, Africans should definitely have like one African festival, music festival in the Caribbean. It could boost tourism. I'm telling you. For a few years, they were having that thing in Dubai, and I said, if this stops, if we could connect or reconnect and find ways to connect back with each other, it could actually take Africa and the Caribbean to greater heights. And that's why I visited there to connect and to see if my literature could be expanded out there. Because I know that one of the ways that one could have a glimpse of a place, a culture, a time is through literature. And that was the birth of my love for literature.
Okay, Mr. Warren, I want to get your take on this.
Yeah.
Over the years, I can speak to last year, when the African Bank had its meeting, the general consensus coming out of there, and the Prime Minister keeps alluding to it, the importance of us connecting with Africa.
Yeah.
Do you think this is one of those platforms that can assist St. Kitts and Nevis and the broader Caribbean to alleviate the challenges, especially now we're talking about this whole issue of the geopolitical issue with Iran, US, and Israel? Do you believe Africa is the gateway out of this?
I think Africa could contribute. I wouldn't call it a direct gateway, because some African countries are still on their own. They have their own challenges and trying to navigate their own internal issues. But I really think a connection with a country like Nigeria, which is a powerhouse in Africa, and the Caribbean could really stir things up for us to work collectively to design a better future for ourselves as Black people. Yeah.
Mr. Warner? Your take on it?
The trade, in its broader sense, maximizes its return based on volume. And with the continent of Africa having over 1 billion people on it, that provides tremendous opportunity. But I think from our side, it will be far more efficiently done if the Caribbean sought to improve its relationships with Africa. Not St. Kitts, Dominica, Barbados, Grenada individually, but as a group. And so rather than having one prime minister carrying 100 people to Nigeria, it may be more efficient for 10 countries to send the same 100 people to Africa and broaden the opportunities, because the cost of each of these countries reaching out to, the 50 plus individual nations on the continent would be it's highly prohibitive. And so, again, volume comes into it. It's a large continent, many people, great opportunities, but at the same time, we must recognize that if we act as a large number, not 55,000 people on St. Kitts Nevis, but as whatever the population of the CARICOM region is, we'll have greater bargaining in power. Because one thing you must always remember, when you reach out to another bloc, hoping to benefit economically yourself, you gotta be careful that sometimes you don't end up being the one who's being devoured. When Richard Nixon reached out to China in the 1970s with the idea that here you had a country of 1 billion people and all these great economic prospects of selling to the Chinese, he failed to appreciate that the Chinese had no money then. Today, United States is trying to ward off the Chinese because in the near future, the Chinese economy will be the largest economy in the world. And so we must recognize that we then face the same things Andrew was speaking about earlier. If we of the Caribbean reach out to Africa and they decide, hey, there are all these opportunities in the Caribbean. There is in some situations, there's a political climate that is different from ours. Are we prepared when we start saying, there are too many Nigerians coming to St. Kitts, there are too many Ghanaians or Kenyans coming to Antigua? Are we prepared for our people to have those attitudes later on? And so again, it comes down to long-term planning, education in the broader sense of the word, to prepare people rather than acting in isolations of politicians saying, we are going to Africa to provide opportunities. You gotta prepare the people back home for the potential consequences, both positive and negative, of those opportunities. In literature, in art, in entertainment, again, we would all benefit by having greater exposures to more experiences.
Okay, before I come back to you, AB, Andre, I want to get your take on this. We have long talked about bridging the gap. Afrexim Bank is basically the ones right now pushing this initiative, right? I want to get your take on it, Andre, how we deal with this before I go back to AB, because I have two questions I really want to ask her.
Yeah, no, I agree with Mr. Warner, and I also, and NAB as well, on the importance and the need to have that connection and that tie with the motherland. It actually should have happened a long time ago, but I guess, as Mr. Warner says, it's never too late to do anything. Better now than never. The concerns, however, that Mr. Warner raised about the xenophobia that we sometimes tend to have in the Caribbean, where if there is an influx of persons coming in from anywhere, even sometimes in our own CARICOM region, we have this, xenophobic attitude towards persons from other countries, then that can thwart development. Because if you are afraid of persons coming in because you feel opportunities that should be there for locals are being given to other persons, or other persons are taking those opportunities, whether that's based on fact or is just based on emotions, you could have a situation where, because again, you spoke about the fact that there are a number of reforms that need to take place that probably won't happen because it's not politically expedient. If you have a situation where politicians are going to feel like, the xenophobia is going to be greater than the rational thinking, they may not be willing to go the extra mile or take the steps that are necessary to forge those relationships in a more meaningful way. All right, it's still early days. We see Barbados; they've also made some overthrows in Africa, and other countries in the Caribbean doing the same. And it's a positive sign, but for most people, it's seen as believing. So until we actually see tangible outcomes from these things happening, and that this is not just political posturing, because an election is coming, or you want to appease certain people, until we actually see the tangibles taking place, for some people, they're not going to believe it until they see it happen. But we really have to begin to think rationally, and by thinking, I'm not just talking about the leaders, but I'm also talking about the population. Looking at things rationally and not just from an emotional standpoint, because I think a lot of times we base our decisions and our opinions based on just the emotions or just fear out of things that are not actually real. If we actually just sit down and look at the numbers, be realistic, yes, you're not going to have an influx of people coming into a small country at the expense of your local people. So how then can it be done in a rational way that you balance the intake of persons coming in to help develop your country, while at the same time not displacing your own, or at least giving thanks to the locals that's not going to happen? Then we can look at things rationally rather than just emotionally. I think sometimes we just base our views just on raw emotions rather than rational thinking.
Okay, AB, but you'd have to unmute. There's a stigma, and both Mr. Warren and Andre touched on it, surrounding Africans in the Caribbean, and more specifically Nigeria.
Yeah.
What would you tell the public out there? Because the only and I'm just going to be honest here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People associate Nigerian with scammers. That's just right, and
Yeah.
people cannot do that. Right. What would you tell them about Nigerians and Africans, especially those listening right now? And the second part of that question has to do with the fact that I've been told time and time again, especially by my friends up here in the DC area, that Africans are not necessarily so welcoming to people in the diaspora, especially those in the Caribbean. How would you address that specific concern?
Thank you so much for that question. Let me quickly just add that. One second. I'm so sorry. If I think
Come, build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers. We don't just sell materials, we help you build your dreams. Whether it's a new home, a renovation, or a DIY project, we're here to make it happen. That's why we say, build with us. From foundation to finish, come to our stores where we have the best in building materials, hardware, tools, paints, expert advice, and more. Whatever you need, you can count on us. So if you're ready to get started, build with us. With Hostels Building and Neva Centers, you're not just building a structure, you're building a future. Let us help you create something amazing. Dream with us, plan with us, grow with us, build with us. Come build with us at Hostels Building and Neva Centers today. Build with us at Hostels.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust to secure your investment. You need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us. TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind. You're always safe with us.
It's the energy of we people, something pulsing inside. It beats in every soul, a feeling we cannot. It's always pushing us forward, the limit up in the sky. There's rhythm in how we flow, a rhythm that can't be denied. It's in the feeling in our we talk. It's in the meaning in our spot. It is the thing that sets us apart. Who we are, 'cause the rhythm of life keeps bumping.
When we out and we active, living we life. So when we drink, Root boy. So when we drink, Root boy. All this lady, anyway you see we are we building up our vibes. So when we drink, Root boy. So when we drink, Root boy. Why?
And welcome back. Sorry about that. We had some technical challenges we were sorting out in the background. And we go back to AB.
thank you for having me. Jermaine, thank you so much for that question. Just like I said when I came to St. Kitts, I really wanted to connect with the locals. That was the highlight of what I wanted my trip to be about. So I took the local buses, I went up country, and I had an experience, right? One guy was like, "You're not from here. Where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm Nigerian." So I was like, "This is strange," because some of the Nigerians we know here don't mix up with the Kittitians. That really hurt me. I said, "Really?" And I just wanted to clear, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to make an attempt to clear that up. because he was like, oh, they're all out there in the medical school. They just stay. I was like, and I tried to. I said, also, let me explain this real quickly to you. Those medical students are not explorers. They're probably not people that will come out into town, want to connect. They are often very tired, overworked. So these are the kind of Africans. So give them a pass. And he was like, all right, it makes a little sense. But, and I thank you for that question. You know, Nigeria is a very big country, over 200 million people. So when you have a huge population like that, they have their values that they bring to any place they go, and they also have, their challenges that they carry with them. That It's been for a while. The Nigerian prince. Let me just quickly add. Did you guys find that article that the Nigerian prince was actually a white guy scamming people? And it just sounded good. The Nigerian prince still sounded good. But of course, like in every culture, in every country, in every settlement, in every group, there are good people. And then there are people that probably want to reap where they did not sow. It happens. But I would like to say the federal government in Nigeria, they are currently working very hard to address those issues of Nigerians trying to scam people or trying to they have like several bodies in charge of making sure these things don't happen. And just like the banks, the financial industry, they warn you, do not send your money to people you don't know, that you have not had any contact with, you don't do business with. So this is something that also internally might be addressed for people to be very careful when doing business with people that they don't know well, people they have never met before, because usually this is how those scams happen. And the most popular of them are like the romance scams and the other financial scams. So generally, Nigerians are like very creative people. They are contributors. They could really come to a place. So all I have to say about that is to properly vet people you want to let into your country. Just like he had mentioned before, you have to. This is something you have to do internally. That was great contribution to make sure that you do not outnumber, bring in too many people to outnumber your own population or something like of that nature, right? So they are great contributors, and I feel like a connection between the motherland, Nigeria, the Caribbean, could really pivot into a direction where both the Caribbean and Africa will benefit tremendously in the future.
Okay, we just have about 10 to 12 minutes thereabout left on the program. Um, Let me just ask you, any one of you guys have a question you want to ask AB? Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I think I will. What areas or what industries do you think St. Kitts and Nevis and Nigeria could build a business relationship with? So, in other words, what businesses do you think, from your experience and being from Nigeria, do you think would do well for persons in St. Kitts and Nevis looking to trade with or do business with in Nigeria?
Great question, Andrea. I like that. Well, Nigeria has several robust industries that are currently doing very well right now. The one that quickly came to mind as soon as I touched foot in St. Kitts and Nevis was the entertainment industry. When I was, so I feel like I listened to some soca. It was nice. Nigerians usually have music festivals these days that attract a huge population of short-term tourists. To go into any country could boost up your tourism revenue. Even so, the creative industry for sure, the entertainment industry, and even I also noticed that in St. Kitts and Nevis, please correct me if I'm wrong. This was just based on my findings, spending some time on the island. The country relies heavily on imports. Like they told me, all the food is imported. So I also feel like agriculture, manufacturing. And I was like, look at the mountains. I feel like I should come grow some bananas here. I could come. So I see so much potential that a collaboration, that's what I would like to call it at this time, could bring to the island from Nigeria and other African countries.
which means that there are probably villages in Nigeria that have more people than the entire population of St. Kitts Nevis. With regards to entrepreneurs in Nigeria investing in St. Kitts Nevis, what, and beyond the entertainment areas of you've spoken of, was there anything that you saw on St. Kitts Nevis that said, hey, there's something that we have in Nigeria that if they could only get the benefit of our experience, it could be magnified in St. Kitts Nevis?
Thank you for that question. Well, a few things, just like I pointed out before, I see like in St. Kitts and Nevis, they could really benefit from like even a financial collaboration with Nigeria, like agriculture. Because in Nigeria they still have like, can you hear me? So in Nigeria, the agriculture industry is very robust. So when I want to make comparison, like one of the big comparison I made was like, as much as the standard of that, and that's why in most places in Africa and Nigeria, the standard of living is low, because most of the food is actually farmed in the country. They do rely on import and export, but not to a huge, but not for food products, just for manufactured products. The manufacturing industry is also coming up in Nigeria gradually, and they are trying to break away from relying heavily on China. So with a proper collaboration, I believe that they could still work with some of the islands to even get some of these things out there at maybe even better rates. The entertainment also could also, they could also have those, like the festivals I mentioned before. Because I noticed too that in St. Kitts and Nevis, the vibe I was getting was like the vibe of Nigeria in the 90s. They are still very reliant on like American culture, American influence, American music. They can also benefit from Nigerian creators. Nigerian creators currently are among the biggest in the world in terms of watch time, in terms of, so this kind of intercontinental collaborations in the music industry, in the creative industry, in the finance and agricultural departments, it could really help St. Kitts and Nevis, and to propel them to a more sustainable future.
Okay, I think I would love to see Andre and Mr. Warner are in one of the African moods at some point, but we're kind of out of time right now. Amy, I'll definitely invite you back again on the program to share your thoughts. But I want you to put some closing thoughts before I jump to Mr. Warner and Andre.
Okay, thank you so much. Overall, I really enjoyed my experience in St. Kitts. I can't wait to come back. I really hope that we can connect. I was also looking for like other creators, writers. I wanted to connect with them so that, in the future, we might have this kind of collaboration where we'll have to experience the Caribbean better, because I tell you the truth, I really noticed that most people in Nigeria, where, and some parts of Africa do not have really not experienced the Caribbean. It's very far away. Just like most people told me when I said I was from Nigeria, like, what? It's too far. What are you doing here? I was like, I came to see my people. So finally, I really, really liked the island. The people were very friendly. They were very welcoming. It was everything I hoped and dreamt it would be. They were just very accommodating and friendly people. So I was so excited. I felt home. So I'm looking forward to connecting more, to reaching out more, to visiting, and probably to even working in any niche available with St. Kitts and Nevis, in any open niche. Thank you, Jermaine.
All right, thanks. Mr. Warner, any closing remarks from you based on what we discussed this morning?
Firstly, I'm delighted to learn that the lady enjoyed her visit to St. Kitts and came away with very positive images of St. Kitts Nevis, and that it is that kind of feedback to encourage us that we need, and it is that kind of experience that we are pleased when people visit us that they would have. On the larger economic issues, I simply say that we ought to prepare ourselves for a challenging year ahead in light of the current conflicts that are going on, not just in the Middle East and in Ukraine, but all those mini ones all over the place. And that we need soon to start thinking more long-term strategically than short-term tactically about how we address our economic challenges.
Andrew, you have the last word.
Well, one of the advantages of going last is that you can agree with everybody that spoke before you. So I do agree with all that's been spoken in terms of the closing remarks, and I will just add that, like Mr. Warren, I do believe that it's time for us to start looking at long term, and one of the avenues is through collaboration, economic collaboration, and doing that with countries like Nigeria, although they are thousands of miles away. We have a shared history, and I think we should be capitalizing on that opportunity and the willingness for African countries like Nigeria and Ghana and others collaborate with Caribbean counterparts to do that and to try to advance our opportunities that exist. While we're doing that as well, we should also pay attention also to what collaboration we can form with CARICOM. I know there has been a long, drawn-out discussion about the single market and economy and the fact that CARICOM is not working and CARICOM is too divided. But I think also right here in the region, we can do a lot more than what we have done. Just takes the political will and also public education to make it possible. So I think we should also, while we are forging ties in Africa, we should also accelerate the process in the Caribbean to have that regional integration movement, but also that economic collaboration that is so desperately needed, especially at this time.
Well, thank you. This morning, I think we had a fruitful discussion on geopolitical issues, challenges with the war, challenges and implication of the war between Iran, Israel, and the United States. And the nice lady, the Nigerian-born writer, author, and entrepreneur, join us. I do know we're out of time. We literally over our allotted time. So I do thank you guys, Warner, Andre, and AB for joining us this morning. Until next time, do enjoy the rest of your weekend, and the news is up next.
Thank you, Jermaine, for having me. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
My pleasure. Yes, my pleasure.
From the South, 98.9 FM.
Right now, you can use your National Bank Visa credit card and earn double reward miles for every dollar you spend, whether you are shopping in store or online. Twice the rewards in every swipe, tap, or click. Every transaction counts. And if you do not have a credit card, apply now and unwrap our special anniversary welcome package. Up to 2,000 bonus My Reward miles and pay absolutely nothing for your first month. This is the card you want in your wallet. Promotion ends March 31st, 2026. Terms and conditions apply. This promotion does not apply to business credit card holders.
Visa card, you want in your wallet. National Bank, Visa card, you want in your wallet. National Bank.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
With the WinFM Midday News, I am Kevon Brown. Our top stories. St. Kitts and Nevis commemorates World Down Syndrome Day, highlights need for inclusive society. Secret Chief Technical Advisor calls for continued investment in renewable energy transition. Inaugural CXC Education Conference focuses on digital transformation. Discharged. Cuban healthcare workers leave Jamaica. Internationally, Iraq drone attack. An intelligence building in Baghdad was targeted. Now the details. On March 20th, 2026, the streets of Basseterre were filled with a vibrant procession that demonstrated strong support and solidarity for individuals with Down syndrome in observance of World Down Syndrome Day, celebrated on March 21st, 2026. The annual event aims to raise awareness and champion inclusion, reflecting this year's global theme, Together Against Loneliness. Students and staff from Cotton Thomas Comprehensive School spearheaded the march